Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, The Questing Mom, where we do tea time book reviews. We make and taste keto treats to have on our book reviews, and we occasionally do reviews on teas and coffees I'm trying for the first time. So let's go ahead and let's get started with this week's tea time book review. So I have blueberry keto muffins. I'll leave the link to that video down below on how I make it. We are drinking some true blueberry tea. I did do a short review video on this, but let's go ahead and let's talk about this week's book review. All right, so I just want to make a super quick disclaimer on this. All the book reviews that I am doing are from Kindle Unlimited. I just like to see more reviews on what's going on with those books. A lot of people like to do book reviews or review books that are super mainstream that you can buy and it's hot and fresh now. But quite honestly, from somebody who has taken on a more minimalistic lifestyle, it's just not realistic for me to go out and buy books all the time. So I do tend to use the Kindle Unlimited through Amazon. It's great. You pay, I think it's $10 a month. I know you get the first 3 months free if they're running a deal. And can I just apologize now if you can hear my dishwasher in the background? I was not thinking of my filming location and I started to do my dishes, so I apologize if you hear the dishwasher. But if you catch Kindle Unlimited when they are doing a deal, you can get the first 3 months for free, and as long as you cancel before those 3 months are up, they will not charge you. After that, it is $10 a month. I love it. You have literally unlimited how many books you can borrow and return. Obviously, you cannot keep those books. So if you do plan to reread books, you would have to obviously buy it or rent it again. Keep Kindle Unlimited. I typically do not reread books. I have very few books that I would even be willing to reread. So for me, having a more minimalistic lifestyle, it just seems to help me out a lot more to go ahead, rent the book, read it, send it back. I have had a couple of duds when it comes to the books, which is why I thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and focus specifically on Kindle Unlimited. For those of you that like to have your books digitally, don't want to have or don't have a lot of room for books in your house, like I have small children, I don't have the room for me to have a million books. We literally have limited space for the bookcases that we do have, and there are specific books that obviously I will have hard copies of, but not every book I need hard copy of. The also other perk of having Kindle Unlimited is the fact that if you don't like the book, if you get 3 chapters in, it's not like you're out $15. You can just return the book and go ahead and rent another one. So now that I've spent about 5 minutes rambling on about the perks of Kindle Unlimited, let's go ahead and let's get right into the series, because the first book review that I'm doing is part of a series. So let's go ahead and let's get right into that. Okay, so I will try to leave a picture up here somewhere of the book cover that we are reviewing. It is called Cold-Blooded Alpha, a bully wolf romance book. It is in a series of 8. 7 of the 8 have been released. The first 2 books are technically linked together, so I thought that was kind of fascinating. So this review may end up being for both those books, depending on how long the video gets. But I thought it was really interesting that they pretty much extended the first book into the second book of the series that typically I'm not a fan of. But I think this author did it in a very good way. By the way, because I know I didn't mention it, the author is Eve Bell, and the 8th book is set to release in May. Right now, I am enjoying the series. I am a little concerned that it's going to drift off to some really weird kind of like we're going to hear about Billy Bob, who showed up in like one book for 2 seconds and do a whole book on him. I have had series like that, and I do tend to try to stay away from those series, or that's about the time I stop reading into the series, because it gets kind of boring because it's getting into characters that I don't really care as much about as the, I guess you could say, main characters that were introduced during the beginning of the series. This particular book is about Dane and Talus. I'm sure I'm saying the names wrong. I am not one to look up how to pronounce names in books, but Dane and Talus are the characters in this book. Dane is an alpha, Talus is a submissive. So the book starts off very interesting, kind of in the middle. It doesn't really have much of a beginning to it. It's just kind of jumped right in to kind of their first meeting and their moonlight mating, which is kind of fascinating. So it gets a little confusing to start off with, and then they go straight from that into the next scene, which is him taking her away. And it's just kind of, like I said, it gets really kind of confusing because you're trying to figure out what's going on in this book, what the whole deal is with the main characters. But I promise you, if you stick with it, it is a really good book to go ahead and make it through. And I feel like the second book definitely explains it a lot better. So this is one of those books that can tend to be very personal and can be very, the first two books at least can be kind of, depending on your background, it can be very disturbing for you. Talus has a very abusive uncle, and even though they talk about that abusive uncle kind of in a subtle way in the first book, they get a little bit more detailed into it in the second book. So just as a little pre-warning, if stuff like that really kind of doesn't sit well with you, I just want to give you a heads up that she does have a disturbing, like, abusive uncle, and they do talk about that abuse. So the interesting part is that, like, Dane during the book, at least more towards the beginning of the book, seems very distant, like he wants nothing to do with her. He doesn't, like, he basically just was stuck with her. It kind of gives the impression that he's stuck with her versus that he actually wants her. So he's very distant when it comes to her, but then he can be very possessive at the same time during certain situations. And it's almost like he's provoking her for whatever reason, forcing her to do things she doesn't want to do. And she tends to kind of distance herself from him, but at the same time, it's a wolf book. So she has a mate, and in that wolf book with her mate and the mate bond, like, obviously she still feels drawn to him no matter how much he's provoking her and kind of, being distant from her at the same time. So like I said, there's really not much backstory on kind of what's going on. And then you also have a lot of sexual context going into it too, which is not forcible sexual context, but it's kind of in a roundabout way, like he wants to be with her, but he can't be with her kind of thing. It's kind of hard to explain. It's definitely a good read when you go to read it, but it's kind of interesting how the dynamic goes, which is what makes the book very confusing. But like I said, it's definitely worth sticking through with it. So you do also get a little bit of vague background on Dane as well. The fact of why he's called a cold-blooded alpha. So Dane did a very unspeakable action. He pretty much destroyed his old alpha, and there's a rumor going around how he did it and what he did with his family that earned him that cold alpha kind of title, which again you don't really hear much about in the first book, and they go to explain more in the second book, which is why this is one of those books that I am very happy that they did a second book versus doing just the first book. Now, he does have this kind of female character that's in the house with them called Savannah. So you do have that little bit of jealousy going on between Talus and how he is reacting to Savannah. Sorry about that. My camera died on me, so I had to go quickly switch out the batteries. But as I was saying, you get things from Talus's point of view, which I think is what makes everything super confusing, because she's confused. She's confused as to why she is now mated to this cold-blooded alpha. She's confused as to what's going on with the whole situation. She's confused as to why he's acting the way he's acting. So there's a lot of confusion on her part, which I think is why the book comes off very confused with things. And I think that's great because you don't get the entire story at the same time. Like I said, it's just kind of a very confusing situation. And I think it's all just because you get it from her point of view. And he doesn't really sit down and explain to her why he's doing what he's doing, why he feels the way he's feeling, and why things are kind of going the way they're going. So it's a very interesting kind of concept. And I'm one of those people, I dive very deep into books. So I put myself into the shoes of the main character, and you kind of start to get those feelings with them as you're reading. At least I do. I'm very big into reading. Like I said, I dive right into books, put myself right into the shoes of that character. So obviously with Dean and her point of view, not a lot of his actions seem to make sense as to why he's doing what he's doing. At the same time all this is going on, she is also battling her inner wolf. So there's a lot of issues going on with her and her inner wolf. And I do find that very fascinating because a lot of times you read books about fated mates when it comes to wolves or mate bonding, and it's very much, I see you, you're my mate, we're going to bite and mark each other, we're going to live happily ever after. And one of the nice things is that this book is kind of not like that. She has her own demons and issues that she kind of has to deal with. She has a kind of crazed wolf, and he is very confusing with how he is treating her. So she's trying to kind of navigate everything all at once. So the great thing is that they do also leave this book on a cliffhanger. And it's not like one of those cliffhangers of, oh, if I don't find out what happens, not a big deal. In my opinion, at least, it's a really good cliffhanger, and it's one of those things where it made me instantly want to start reading book 2 to find out what exactly happened and what happened in book 2. Well, let's take a sip of tea before I give you my final rating for this book. So my final rating for this book, I give it a 4 out of 5. I do really love how they really make you feel like you are in the story with the character and you are the main character. I love how they stay in process with just the main character. I do find it very hard at times to get through the book because of how confusing it is, and things that are going on don't seem to make sense at the time. So they do explain some of the confusing things towards the middle to end of the book, which is really nice. Again, I just find the whole book as a whole a very confusing book and situation. The cliffhanger was really good, and it really made me want to go ahead and start reading book 2, which is why I am continuing to read this series. So we're going to go ahead, since this video has been so long, we're going to make this a 2-parter for you to see how book 2 goes, and it will get its own tea time video. So I hope you pick this book up, start reading it, whether you decide to purchase it, whether you decide to try it on Kindle Unlimited. Once you read it, leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts on the book. If you have read it, let me know your thoughts. If you have any recommendations for Kindle Unlimited books that you want to see me do a review on, leave all of it down in the comments below. I would love to hear your opinion on things. If you want to see my muffins, how to make them, my mini review on my blueberry tea, I will leave both of those linked down below. Go ahead and check them out. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more tea time book reviews, more tea reviews, more treats that we're going to make for our tea time reviews. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time. Bye.